Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Show podcast. Today we are joined by Kirk Mauriello, founder of Profit Cookers, a company that helps restaurants boost their profits through virtual kitchens and innovative food delivery solutions. Kirk, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Gordon. Doing great. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So before we jump in, because Jose and I are sort of licking our chops here because we love virtual kitchens. We love the technology. It has changed quite a bit over the last 5 years, as I'm sure you're going to share with us. But before we jump into all of that stuff, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your journey as to how you got to where you are today?
Well, I was a kid born and raised in Staten Island, New York. Went to college there in New York. Moved to Chicago back in 1994. Started my career in Chicago, just not in the food business. Later on, got into the food business at around the age of, what was I, about 39, 38 or 39. Went to work for a company called Aurelio's Pizza. A friend of mine owned the company. I went in to help with business stuff, not really running restaurants, but more on the franchise side of selling them. And then found myself doing a lot of operating and ended up getting promoted to the chief operating officer for that company. Learned a lot about the restaurant business, a lot about franchising. Left there to go become the COO of Honey Jam Cafes, which has now grown to a pretty good sized company. My partners took it further than I stayed on. And then went and started my own brand called Crave, which wasn't successful as a restaurant in Plainfield, Illinois. But that's where I learned the virtual restaurant business. I had a few brands that I ran out of my restaurant and decided, this is probably a good idea. And this is back in 2019 before COVID. So I came up with a business model I thought would work well for restaurants that some of the other companies that were in the business at the time starting out weren't really doing. They weren't restaurant people. They were more technology. So we built kind of a model around that and then tried to go and sell it a lot. And it was very challenging because restaurants were doing well. Virtual was unknown to anybody. And then COVID happened and that changed everything. And that's where we're at today.
That brings us full circle, right? Right up to speed. Listen, Kirk, the virtual kitchen model has grown a lot in recent years. How do you see the technology driving the virtual kitchen revolution, and what opportunities does it offer restaurant owners?
Well, I mean, the last few years, we've seen a major shift into online ordering and delivering, mainly due to COVID, kind of jump-starting that model and that the use of those tools, the technology being the apps even be with the technology being great for drivers to be able to be communicated to be able to get food where it needs to go. And that model has grown so much that today, if you're not involved in some way with delivery from your restaurant or online ordering or virtual brands running out of your restaurant, you're missing out on a huge part of the market. The consumers have really gone to online ordering through apps for delivery in a way that I don't think anybody ever thought would happen when it happens. COVID changed that because it forced people to learn how to use these tools. But when COVID ended, our expectation was, maybe things will get slower. We don't expect it actually got busier. There were more orders because people went back to their busy lives. They were no longer just sitting at home trying to get food. They went back to their busy lives and now it became a convenience. And that's what we're noticing now is that it's more about convenience ordering than it is about, I have to order that way because that's the only way I can get restaurant food to my house.
Mhm.
The technology has gotten really good internally, single tablet technology for the restaurants to make it easy. Integration with POS systems have been a big part of that too. We don't use the integration part at Profit Cookers. We use a single tablet technology because we believe that we want our business to still stay separate within the confines of a restaurant as a separate business model that they can run.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. Jose?
Yeah, no, so I'm just curious. When you say that, do you mean that like one tablet for each business and then all the deliveries into one tablet?
Yes, yeah, we call them consolidation tablets. So for instance, with Profit Cookers, we have a tablet that we utilize that all of our brands, whatever the restaurant chooses to fulfill the branding and the orders for those brands, we have all of the orders for those brands on Uber, DoorDash, Grubhub, or any online system that orders come into one tablet, print to one ticket in the kitchen, or print to or show up on a KDA screen, anything like that.
Yeah, no, very, very, it's understandable, especially the educational part. I can imagine because I've been there multiple times and now again, how that educational piece to restaurateurs is an uphill battle until it doesn't. And I think that the pandemic had such a significant impact in having to learn, having to adapt, that my hope is that that educational piece remains, because there is more technology, there is more things happening. So in this post-pandemic restaurant landscape, what strategies should restaurant operators focus on to maximize profits and ensure long-term success?
Well, in my opinion, when a restaurant starts out, and I was a restaurant owner, so I get this completely. A restaurant will start out when they open up and it's 4th of July, right? Everything's going great. It's Christmas. Everything's going great. Everything's wonderful. New people coming all the time. But then a restaurant eventually settles into what they are, right? And it's very difficult to grow that business, in big numbers every year. Like, you're not going to grow 20% in a single year unless something major happens in the market, right? So either competitors go out of business or new competitors come into business, and then you have some shifts in sales numbers that could be dramatic, right? But for the most part, you are what you are. You have only so many seats in your restaurant that you can serve. People only come into the restaurant certain hours of the day. So, you picture a typical restaurant, a breakfast restaurant. In the morning, you might have people, then lunchtime, but you've got times of the day that nothing's happening, right? So how do you fill, as a restaurant, how do you fill those gaps in there, right? And how do you take advantage of what's going on in the marketplace? In other words, what are the consumers doing is driving business that doesn't come in your door, right? So the virtual brands, what we were able to figure out was that by putting brands out there that were common food, right? Things that people eat every day, right? In one way, form, or another. They might want to have a sandwich today, and tomorrow they might want to have soup, and the next day they might want to have breakfast for lunch. There's all different things, and they don't go to the same restaurant every day to order. So we came up with a plan of putting out different brands with different culinary options that were easy for restaurants to perform, which then opened up the whole world to them on what the online world can be and the delivery business can be. And that's something that a restaurant owner, when you're only concentrating on your own brand and how you do business internally, you don't see outside of that. So it was a challenge getting restaurant owners to come on board at first. But then when you start to explain to them how this is going to be, like, hey, you're going to be fishing with a net now, as opposed to fishing with your single brand on a fishing pole, right? You're now going to throw 20 brands out there, or 5 brands out there, or whatever number you choose. And you're going to have them in 3 different marketplaces, similar to the way Amazon works, right? But just specific about food, right? And now obviously DoorDash and those companies have all gotten into other things because they realize you can have other things delivered besides food. But for the most part, it was food, and it still continues to be dominated by food. Now you have a net to fish with. So today, if Jose decides he wants a BLT, he can order badass BLTs online, and there's 9 different BLTs, and it's specific to that. Then tomorrow, you might want to decide to order high burgers because you want a burger. Now you're ordering from Profit Cookers brands, but you're getting it from the same kitchen of a restaurant that is performing the making of our food. So now that restaurant is now getting orders that they would never have gotten before, right? Because maybe you wouldn't even think of going to their brand for a burger or their brand for a BLT. So it just opens up the world to them. And then the restaurant owners start to get it, because once you show them how it works, they get it. Then it's about making it profitable. That's a whole nother conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I think that there is something to be said about the shifts in behavior that we're having, including intermittent fasting, but basically things that are changing, that are taking us out of the traditional industrial revolution, the breaks, lunch break, to get that we've all made it to be the way that it should be. And that by having that presence and an opportunity, there should be a possibility to actually increase market share, which is so critical.
Yeah, and in the end, as a restaurant, you're open, right? Your kitchen's open, you're running, you got staff there, you got all this stuff going on. Now, what if I told you that what we found in this business is that at lunchtime, we're not busy at the normal hour of lunchtime. The time that people go to lunch is 11:30 to 1 o'clock, right? Well, you plan as a person to go out at that time to lunch. You're in your office, you're with family, whatever you're doing, you plan to go to somewhere and you're like, let's go to this restaurant. So it's all planned ahead of time. Online, you order when you get hungry. It's an on-demand ordering, right? So you're at work and you're in the office and you didn't plan to go out to lunch today. So when do you order? When you get hungry, which is after the time that you would have gone to have lunch, right? So a lot of the orders come in just past the busiest times in the restaurant. Now, we all know as restaurant owners that your guys are standing around. If you could add 3 orders an hour in those times, it changes your whole P&L, right?
Yeah, now you're talking our language. For sure.
Exactly.
I mean, consumer behavior has completely shifted with online ordering, the psychology behind it, the need for convenience, the want for convenience has completely shifted this space and the restaurant industry, especially in QSRs. So, Kirk, with ghost kitchens and virtual brands, they've become much more prevalent in the industry, unbeknownst to a lot of restaurateurs who are still running traditional businesses. How can restaurants effectively integrate those concepts to boost their profitability?
That's a great question. And it's so simple. That's the craziest part about all this is it's a very simple thing for them to do. They can create their own brands, okay? But there's some rules today that weren't there back before with the third-party delivery companies like Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub. They won't allow a restaurant just to put up as many brands as they want and run them out of their restaurants anymore. They want to have some semblance of order to that because they don't want to fill their platforms with the same thing. They want culinary differentiation. They want people to have good experiences. So they put some rules in effect that weren't there 3 years ago. So today, I would say that the best way to do it is to get a hold of a virtual brand company like ours, and then we have some competitors out there, and talk to them about how they can bring their brands and how you can utilize their brands as a business model that you can kind of drop into your business. Goal behind it, though, is for profitability of your restaurant. And you have to keep that in mind as a restaurant owner all the time. It's not about selling more food. It's not about doing more work. It's about doing more profitable, sell more profitable food, sell more profitable orders. And that takes a specific understanding. And a lot of the companies in this business don't really understand that. They think that you can just throw some stuff together, put it out there, and people make money. That's not the way this works. And especially for a restaurant, you have to understand what the actual costs are of making that food. You have to understand what the ingredients cost, all those things, and then price it properly in the market. What we also found is that by making things simple online, right? So the ordering process online has to be very simple. There's no communication going on between a server in a restaurant and the customer ordering online. So if there's things that are questionable, there's going to be errors with those orders. There's going to be issues in that kitchen. So restaurant owners they should be looking at if they're adding virtual brands to their business, which is definitely something they should be doing. If they're not doing it, they're losing out because there's so much market share today and spend in that market that's going through those channels. You have to be part of it. You want to have a company that understands how to market those brands. You also want simplicity. So you want to be able to use the same ingredients you have in your restaurant. You don't have to add more cost to your business. You just want to sell more of what you already have, right? And there's lots of brands out there that you can make that fit those parameters. You want to be able to make things quickly. You don't want to have a long time. You don't want it to interfere with your current operations. So if there's anything that's going to interfere with your operations, you don't want that brand. You want things that can be the continuity of your kitchen stays. And if you take a focus on that, you can get some really good virtual brands, bring them into the market, and you'll have exclusivity on every sale that comes in that territory, which is even more important, right? That keeps your profitability high.
But it just makes sense. You're using the same ingredients to do other things, which basically you could, in that process, find things that have even more profits than what you're usually doing. It's that variety.
I'm also going to tell you something that's very interesting. Every one of our restaurant partners across the country, no matter where it is in the country, from Seattle to Florida to New York to California, they all start off with our brands. And there's so many, let's say you have 100 different drivers show up at your restaurant to pick up orders for the week. What everyone doesn't realize is that those 100 drivers are all community people. They all live in the same neighborhood. And If you think that everybody knows where your restaurant is, you're out of your mind. You could be there 50 years and it's people across the street that don't even know you're there. Right. And so now all of a sudden, these 100 drivers that are coming every week, you treat them nice. They're inside your restaurant. Cost you nothing to get them to come inside your restaurant. What would it cost to drive 100 people through your front door of a restaurant? I think we all know it's very expensive. Okay. If you wanted to market and advertise like that, now these people come in, treat them well. Do use your bathroom. They're driving. They're out there. They're the people that live in your community. They are your customer base. Guess what? Every one of our restaurants, their internal sales in their restaurants has gone up by at least 10%. Everybody's not going to eat the same thing every day, but guess what? You treat somebody nice, and we all know how restaurants are. Restaurants are personal to people, okay? When you walk in, everybody, there's nobody in this world that has their best friend come into town and is going to take them out to dinner, and they're going to take them to their favorite restaurant. And if it's a bad experience at that favorite restaurant, they are embarrassed. But why? It isn't their fault, because it's personal to us.
Right.
Take advantage of those people that are coming in your door through another business model that all live in the neighborhood. They're not some driver that drove in from 18,000 miles away. They're a guy that lives a half a mile down the street. Treat them nice and they'll become customers on a regular basis. And these are all the unintended things that started happening when we started doing this. We started noticing this. We had one store go from 20,000 a week in internal sales to 40,000 a week. They were doing 700 orders a week with us. They had drivers coming in, and they were in a, when I say a D location, it might have been a Z location. They were in an industrial park that faced inside an industrial park, and they had no signage on the main road, and their sales doubled internally. It became a great business.
That's a perfect example of a brick and mortar going virtual and seeing success strictly from that model. That's fantastic. Kirk, what are some of the key steps restaurant owners can take to improve their profitability in today's market?
In today's market, everybody wants to cut costs, right? Everybody looks at, and how do you cut costs when you have inflation at, 3 to 9%? And if you look at food, it's even higher sometimes, depending on the items. So you can't cut costs there, right? Well, labor's all going up because there's minimum wages that are going up. So you can't do that. So you have to figure out, all right, how am I going to benefit from this? Well, in the long run, restaurants should benefit from it, right? Because all of a sudden the menu pricing becomes a new level, and then food eventually does settle out. Okay. It's never always at the high point, right? It's like any market condition. It always drops down a little bit. So you can take advantage and you can pick up. In the long run, you can make your business a better business as long as prices don't fall out, right? As long as if you're selling eggs for $10 today and they go to 12 next week because egg prices go up, if it doesn't fall down, we have to sell them at 6, you can usually stay at the 12. Now you can improve your margins long-term. Not a bad thing for the business, not the ideal thing to happen early on though, because most restaurants can't move their pricing models fast enough, right? On top of it, most restaurants don't price their menu properly either, right? They don't know how to price. So with using virtual brands coming in, it's all new business. It's all additional business. Right. These are not people that were coming in your door. These are not people that are going to come in your door. These are people that are going to order these brands and they just want good food. So all of a sudden you're getting a bigger market share of the spend in that community. On top of that, we're pricing everything, and the pricing can be moved immediately. So for instance, what we do at Profit Cookers is we monitor the market every week on pricing using US Foods, Cisco, their models, right? And if anything moves by a certain amount in the algorithm, we automatically increase the prices online. It's automatic. So that allows, they never give it up. At most restaurants, it'll be 6 months before they realize they're not making money on something, right?
Bingo.
Because you got to print the paper. You got to print the menu. You got to do it costs thousands of dollars to do this stuff. And this is where I see a lot of things going in the future here too, even with virtual brands, is going to a dynamic pricing model. There's no reason why, if you own a breakfast lunch restaurant, let's say, and your busiest days, 60% of your business is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that you should be charging the same amount on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as you do on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when you've got a 45-minute wait at your door. You should be able to capitalize on that, even if it's $1 ahead, and increase your profitability. That's where restaurants can increase their profitability, but they got to be smart about it, right? Online, by adding stuff, you can increase your profitability tremendously. Like for instance, what I realized in the business model of restaurants was that profitability is the most important thing, right? And when you get to really good restaurant owners, they understand that. And so we went to a model, we have a guaranteed profit margin. with profit cookers. So we guarantee those restaurants that they're going to profit 30% of every dollar that we sell online. They're going to make a minimum of 30%. Now, depending on the market, that could be even higher, right? So for instance, a burger in Florida might sell for $15, but a burger in New York might sell for $25. Well, why does the burger in New York sell for $25? Because the food cost is higher? No. It sells because the pricing model is higher on the brick and mortar restaurant. Online, we don't have that cost in the same way, but we have the pricing model to use to price our food. You're not going to sell food for $15 online because it's $25 in store. No, you're going to sell it in the same market level. But the cost drivers are different in New York than they are in Florida, or they are in Chicago or LA. So you're capturing them. When I say those cost models, I mean the rent, fixed costs, the labor. That's all driving, especially in California with minimum wage labor being in some of these restaurants. So there's only one way to do it, right? Take the labor out or increase the price. There's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. It's like one of the things that I always think about is, remember when finally inflation in the United States dropped to it was like 4.6, everybody was celebrating, but Florida was still at 9 because of all the conditions over there. So how do you not think that, I mean, you have to do something about it. Now, with all of this, and there's a future, particularly in terms of virtual kitchens and technology-driven solution. What do you believe? What will be shaping this? What is next?
Break out the crystal ball. We want to hear it.
I mean, I'm truly in the virtual branding space, right? And I look at where we are as a company, and we haven't even hit 1% of the market, and it's a huge potential. I mean, we brought in last year, well, this year we'll bring in over $3 million in profits to our restaurant partners. Profits, not sales dollars. The profits they're going to make is $3 million. Well, these are all independently owned restaurants, because I believe in the model really belongs with an independently owned restaurant. You don't have to worry about quality control as much as you would, because you have owners that are involved in the process. They're going to put out good food. They're going to do the right things. There's things that you take out of play, but it's a longer process to reach those restaurants along the way, right? Like, it's much easier to go and get, 50 Applebee's to do your stuff. But there's a whole nother set of problems you run into possibly. We saw with Mr. Beast Burger, they have huge quality issues, right? Now it's a $200 million lawsuit between the two parties. Well, why did that happen? Well, it's very easy to see why that happens. So we chose a different model. We also chose that model because we believed in that everything's in the local community then. So even though we're a national branding type of company, it's all local. Like, all the money stays local. The drivers are local. The staff is local. The restaurant owners usually live locally in the communities. All these families are being affected by this, and now it gives them an edge against those bigger companies like Applebee's that has its just wings, right? You want to be able to compete in that if you're an independent restaurant. So I see that part of the business really continuing to grow and grow dramatically. The question is, how do you get to them faster, right? And the restaurant industry has always been an issue with getting to owners, right? I was one of those guys. I was a guy that owned a restaurant, and I had sales guys coming in all the time. Listen, if you didn't come at 8 times in a row, I never met with you. I already had everything I needed. It's different. Yeah. So, and we want to reach the good restaurants. We want to reach the guys that are successful in the restaurant business, that they can bolt this on and become even more successful. Right. So we have a different method of doing things than a technology company might have, where they're just trying to shotgun everything and see whatever hits. Right. And that's where I see it going. The technology, I see the integrations, anything that can integrate into and I don't even know if it's integrating into the POS systems per se, because I've seen that and they seem to work, but they can get very expensive too. Mm-hmm. Right. Especially when you talk about adding a lot of brands, and now you got to pay so much a month for each brand that you're adding, and it can get quite expensive to operate in that manner, to have it run through your POS system. Right. So we found that running it separately, because with us, the technology, we bring the technology in and we put it in the restaurant. Very simple, tablet printer type of thing. There's no cost to the stores to do that. Like, they can start with us and it costs nothing. So It makes more sense. And we're actually performing the sales. They're not. They're performing the making of the food. I see that happening a lot more, where they don't have to worry about sales tax. They don't have to worry about all these things. They're getting a 1099 basically for making the food. Like we hired them as our chefs. Very simple. And I see that growing more and more down the road.
If you could in one sentence give some advice to our restaurateur audience, what would that be?
Well, I'd say, you've gotten into a business that isn't easy, and you have to find ways of making it easier on yourself. And you're not going to grow your business without adding more sales. Bottom line, if you're not growing your sales, you're going backwards. There's no doubt about it. I worked for a big electrical distribution company years ago, and the CEO told me, he says, Kirk, listen, we can cut our costs, we can cut all this stuff, but we can't make them into profits. We need to sell more. That's it. You need to sell more. Well, whether you're selling it or you have somebody that's selling it for you and you're performing the function of providing the food, you're still involved in the sales process. Right. And that's the most important thing, right? And we have a very simple model. I say to a restaurant, can you use 100 orders a week? Can you use 10 orders a day? Well, in most cases, people don't realize it's a pennies business, right? We're trying to get pennies to that bottom line. And when you add sales, you take all your other costs down. Your labor cost becomes less because you're productive. Your productivity level goes up dramatically. And that's the most important part of your business. You want people working that you're paying. And if that cook is providing, let's say at the end of the day, you have 3 cooks in the kitchen and you did $1,500 in sales, you did $500 a cook. Well, what if you could do $800 a cook? Like, and everybody knows that that's the best thing that can happen, right? But what does it cost to get people to come through your door to do that? It's expensive. Yeah. And all these marketing companies promise they can do this and they can do that. Listen, I've used them all. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's very costly. Nobody has the money to really put towards it long term. You can't expect to put something out there for a month and hope it works. Like, it's got to be done for a long term. And the restaurants don't do that. So they have to have other ways of doing this. And that's where I think virtual brands are the best thing that they can do as a restaurant, is to look into that and diversify your business a little bit. Because you know what? On a rainy day when nobody's coming into the restaurant, they're all ordering online. On a snowy day, they're ordering online. They're not coming into your restaurant. Now you start to balance it out. You got to diversify how you reach consumers.
Not to mention, it's getting too hot outside. What are they going to do? They're going to order online.
And I'm telling you, the amount of orders that come through online would blow most restaurant owners' minds. But they wouldn't know it, because how would they know it? They're in their restaurants working. Until someone can show it to them or they take it on as an opportunity, they're never going to know. And it's hard to reach them in the right way.
Yeah.
The online space is a space that has been around for, as long as the internet has been around, that restaurants really don't fully understand yet. And we love it. We love taking a magnifying glass to it, whether it's dynamic pricing, whether it's virtual brands. It is an immensely changing space. And we're here for it. We're excited about it. Listen, this is all the time we have for this episode today, Kirk. But now's your time to plug away. Where can people connect with you? What's your platform of choice?
Yeah, so we can be reached through our website at www.profitcookers.com. You can see a lot of information about it, the different brands that are out there. You can also reach us directly through our phone number at 701-314-4849, and also through email. My email is kirk@virtualprofitcooker.com. All one word, as Virtual Profit Cooker. And we can show you anything you want to know about the business. We have case studies. We can show you live. You can watch a store, how orders come in, and you can see that and determine whether you like that. You can look at it. But the main thing that we would do is we look at your business. We tell you what we can do. We take a look at your menu. We know what type of brands. You get to pick them. And then we customize it to actually work within your business. So about 90% of the items that we have on our menus will work for any restaurant. And then there's about 10% that, are more specific to a region, possibly, like might be chorizo, or might be shrimp, or might be a crab or something like that. And we just wouldn't have those items on those particular menus for you. So it's very customizable to work within your kitchens too.
Very plug and play. I love the out of the box aspect to Profit Cookers. That's amazing. Speaking of plugs, this podcast is sponsored by Dine Pricing, real-time restaurant profitability. Dine Pricing uses artificial intelligence to improve restaurant profitability by dynamically updating menus across digital channels like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub. Again, thanks to Kirk for joining us this week. That's all the time we have. Until next week, say goodbye, Jose.
From bumps in seats to taps on phones. Goodbye, Jose.
I don't even know what that means. Kirk, that was amazing.